We're live.
We're live back after a very short break. Switching gears once again. And this time we spend time with John Adams to help us. The director from the Center of Geographic Information, Agency of General Services. We had a little introduction to this a few weeks ago in a joint hearing, but I wanted to just bring John into our committee so we can all make sure we have a real feel for the capabilities. If that's to the extent we look at mapping and thinking about how things the lay of the land. So I just had to in a way, I almost redo that, look a little bit of what he did before, but then to have him look over for us to ask questions. It's half an hour set aside to do this a little refresher. So with that, open your on.
Great. Hi again, I'm John Adams, Director of the Center for Geographic Information, part of the Agency of Digital Services. And I think I sent over a slide deck and I will share my screen here. So I will go over some of the mapping tools I went over in the short hearing, but before doing that, I thought I'd just step back, give a very, very quick high-level overview of the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. In case you're not familiar with, we were established back in as part of Act 200 in 1988, and our purpose has remained the same throughout that time, and that's been to develop and implement a comprehensive strategy for the development and use of a geographic information system. We are part of the Agency of Digital Services and service all different agencies, but also coordinate across different levels of government and work with municipalities, academia, and have a fairly broad constituency user base. So what is a geographic information system? GIS. It's essentially a computerized system of where we manage information and its related to location on the Earth. And once we get multiple spatial data sets, we can create map layers and they can be combined into a system. So just imagine layering on top of each other different pieces of information like where our roads are, or rivers, water bodies, and buildings. What do we do, or what's our role here? Kind of put it into three buckets. This is a simplified sort of picture of what our duties are in statute. We build those foundational data sets, what we call our spatial data infrastructure, and that includes things like aerial imagery, elevation data, statewide tax parcel data. We lead the use and development of the GIS, so there are elements of governance and cat herding there, where we're trying to coordinate folks, make sure we follow the same data standards and things work together. And then we work to empower folks to access that data and visualize it. So build tools that are easy to use and make that information useful. You go back to our first annual report from 1992.
We had the score first.
This is
Bruce featured for the end of that.
Bruce Westcott, our first director of VCGI, on a call-in show here on Orca Media. In 1992, we had 107 people fill out catalog orders. And we sent them our state database, which fit on these 12 floppy disks, 17 megabits in size, but a lot of hard work and forward-thinking people back then Today, we have, with 23 partners, published over 1,000 data sets and had over 1 billion map server requests. And we see around 100,000 unique IP addresses every month hitting our servers. So it's gone from this very niche technical thing to a basic government service
Geez, can we put a tax on that?
that everyone uses.
More piece.
We don't send out floppy disks anymore. You can access our data similar to what most people access movies these days. You can stream the data online like a Netflix for maps. You can view it. Most people do view it in our various map viewing applications, and we federate data from municipal and regional levels and different agencies and make it all available in a single place. If you're interested in seeing sort of what that looks like or some other use cases here, there's a link to our year review with 40 or so examples of how this technology is used across state government. And I'll transition now to the Act 73 tools that we had built in support of the school redistricting task force. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, these tools, or the majority of them, were actually built before the first meeting of the task force, looking at the timeline that they had and the legislation. We thought it would be best if we put something together to present to them when they did meet, so that they could either give us feedback or use those tools immediately. So these were built, the majority of them, back earlier in the summer.
Yes. So like for your, you got a tool where you can actually check like bus routes and distances and times that we saw last week. Yeah, how'd you get that data? Did
We didn't-
people ask specifically for it at some point?
Bus routes we don't have.
Okay.
Drive time was one that was requested, and then that we did work on to do to build an app for the redistricting task force. And that specifically, we have what we call a routable road network, and we can configure different parameters. So for drive time, we used Tuesday in January and used bus telemetry. So using data for buses to estimate the speed, and then we create these drive times from the schools. Those create those areas. And I'll show you that application first. Well, I have three here. We think of them as like the district builder, so one that lets you create districts and look at various metrics from whatever configuration you've created. One is the Explorer, so this is one that has a lot of different layers in it, and it lets you look up or see different information about schools, school districts, and anything else you may be interested in. And then the drive time mapper. This was our school district builder, all built with open source technology, and this is accessible to anyone, so anyone can see exactly how we built this. Everything went into it. Free to make a copy of it and create their own version of it if they're interested.
How, when you take the time to build one of these, how long does it take? We give you parameters, and or they obviously gave you parameters. How long does it take an individual to get it set up so I can start using that parameters they gave? Just for knowledge that you can complete.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what.
Like when they ask you for this, for the distance, drive a timer's map. How long did it take somebody to, sit down and build that so they could go in and use it?
Yeah, that application was interesting. That probably took us maybe around a week of time. Took a lot. There was a lot of processing involved there. So we pre-processed the data and then we try to figure figure out a way to make it available in a web application. But some of these things, like the school district explorer, if you wanted us to add a layer, for example, that's not there, you know, the agency of transportation maintenance districts or something like that, you know, that we could do in a matter of minutes, add that and make it available so you could visualize. Some of these other things can take longer. So this is the district builder. I think one of the key things to understand about this is we used municipalities, so towns, as the base unit, the building block. So we have the ADM, the student enrollment by town, and from that we can aggregate those out to create the different districts. One quick note here: we did simplify the town boundaries in the application. So if you were to zoom way in, notice something maybe like a little slightly off, we did that just for the performance as the application, but these aren't the precise town boundaries in the application. So you can have screenshots of it here to leave you with. I can do a live demo of it also after if you're interested in. I will note you can toggle on schools in this app, and you can, if you click the different types of schools, you can filter them on the map so they can decide which type of school you'd like to show there. If you were to select one of the districts and then start clicking on towns, those get added to that district you selected. You can select a different one and then start clicking on towns, and you notice those change colors there. Toggle down the district and you'll see what schools are included in those in whatever districts you've created, along with their facilities condition index and their enrollment. If you're not interested in just starting from scratch or blank, you can. We have a few pre-configured districts in the app. If you look in the drop down here, we have county, school board association regions, superintendent association regions, CTE regions, and regional planning commissions. So if you were to select those, it would assign towns to those different districts, and then use that, and then add another district to create the or change however you'd like. Each dot, if you were to select and click over to the supervisory unions tab, each dot represents a town. You can see the town and what supervisory union it exists in. So this might be helpful to see this example. It's showing like the Bennington Rutland SU. The Regional Planning Commission would have split that SU, so you have towns, for example. So at a glance, you can see if any have been split.
Also, you're saying that if you did that one on the RBC regions, you'd end up dividing some existing districts.
Correct. And then
Okay, so that's interesting. It's interesting to have that capability to show. Yeah.
Yeah, you can then quickly see or scan down, and when you see dots of different colors in the SUs, that means you have a town. You have an SU that is towns that have sent to different districts. Let's see, in terms of saving this work or sharing it, there are a couple different ways to do it. The simplest way is to when you click on more, you can hit copy shareable link, and you will get a long URL, and that contains basically instructions on how, if you were to send that to someone or reopening it, it sends instructions to the application to tell it, open it exactly how this user had the state of it when they clicked on copy shareable link. And then another way is to click on CSV assignments, and that will download a table with a list of the towns and then what district you've assigned it to. And that's probably a more stable way to do it. If you spend a lot of time on a particular map, that would be the safest way to download it onto your hard drive, and then you could import it back into the application. If you hit on more, hit import, just drag that file over and it would reopen the same way that you figured it. What those look like, so you can see that URL can be pretty long and ugly there. And the table example of the fields that get downloaded there if you were to hit CSV assignments. If you were to click generate report, things get aggregated up into different charts and tables, including the average daily membership, the grand list per student, other information, the 10-year change, the public schools by type, SDI categories, and whether or not your supervisory unions are attacked. If you keep scrolling down, you select different districts that you've created and what those profiles would be, including the total grand list, the breakdown by town served, school information. So that's the district builder, and I can run through the school explorer, but maybe I'll stop to see if there are any questions about the district builder.
For it should help us, but
What I could go to the website, but what I don't see is, okay, so the orange is CT. I was looking in the schools for CT.
so the orange dots, CTE, right?
Mhm.
Orange dots, yeah.
Yeah, so this on the screen is the Explorer map. This is the one that lets you visualize different types of map layers. When you open it, by default, it's just the schools and the town boundaries that show up. If you were to just click on a school, then you would see some information about that school pop up in the information tab automatically there. You go to select the map layers tab, you'll see this long list of different layers you can toggle on. So school districts, for example, and there are a number of different overlays that you have. School districts that could be, you can have 2 or 3 that are overlapping. It can be challenging to visualize those, so there are overlays with hatching that show that. And then if you were to select, just click on one of those on the map, you'll see it gives you information on the town as well as the district. You can see if there are multiple districts and the supervisory union. If you were to toggle on other layers, you can see related information, information related to those layers. And these are most of these were different layers requested by the school redistricting task force, but the committee had any interest in seeing anything that's not there and it exists, it is pretty easy for us to add to this map.
Population density. So I apologize. I just.
Yes, these are population distribution. So each point represents a certain number of people, going from 2 to 30 at a very high resolution.
Can I ask a question? I'm curious, just because it's come up so much. Are you able to, I don't know how this would actually be visually represented, but choice towns and where they send their kids?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. We do have some of that data.
Database.
Some of that data I think may have available in the table And then figuring out how to show it on
Yeah.
that so that it's not just,
And we could just say like 9 through 12, because I think it gets really complicated if you're trying to say, okay, they have like elementary school, but not middle school, et cetera, but like, where do people send high school students from Chaska?
some of this maybe on there. And I know sometimes like this, some of these definitions can be challenging and mean different things to different people. So like
I-
what a choice tab is,
Fair.
or so
Yeah,
I can put on.
non-operating or high school, yeah.
For example, we had. There was a request to see the towns. For like the forest academies where those are coming from, so this is showing you. From those schools where. How many students by town, I think there might have been a threshold or a cutoff of like, there had to be more than 2 students or something, or.
Mhm.
Can't remember what we used here. So these lines are showing, for example, for Burton County. The thickness. of the
Ah.
line is shown. If you click on it, it'll should tell you.
It's really interesting.
So like Londonderry to Burton.
Yeah,
Okay,
92.
and you scroll up. It just,
it's that for part way of the state.
yeah,
That's the same JNLI.
yeah,
And then what about way up in the corner? Even
This is just the 4. For historic academies.
oh. So we can't see any other high school. Okay.
The request was to see for these 4, I don't know if we wanted to do every high school.
Not every high school, but every high school that receives tuition dollars, but it's independent.
If we have it, we could try to
It's
put it
what,
on the
like,
map, but maybe Torrent.
That doesn't sense, yeah.
Non-operating, non-operating.
No, 19 schools that are still eligible to receive. Yeah.
Well, actually, a lot of, most tuition gets go to public schools.
I'm actually
Yeah.
curious about, I guess
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
true. Like what I'm
Yeah.
curious about is where the choice school students go. Like if the Rutland have 9, we would see a huge line
Like,
for Rutland.
Much of Grand Isle.
Yeah,
Is non-operating. And
exactly.
those kids almost all go to public schools.
Right, and we know like they were getting emails, right? 2 of the towns probably go more to Franklin and 2 of the towns go more to Chittenden. So I don't know if there's a way to see that, like I was more curious about the non-operating districts and where they send students for high school, not necessarily the independent schools and where they get students from.
I think so.
Because they get choice.
Defer to Torrent.
Yeah, I believe we provided data to that extent to the task force last fall. I don't know if it all got incorporated in the mapping tool, but I think that data does exist
Last fall,
this past fall, yeah,
to who?
to the redistricting task force.
Okay,
So yeah, so I think that file exists. on
Okay.
kind of like an interactive data website. So you can always look at the data. It's not visualized. I think it should be on there.
okay.
Yeah.
So, like, not necessarily gonna ask you to do that, but I think that'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
If we were, I mean, those are the kinds of emails we're getting from people who are saying these maps make decisions for us that don't reflect our current patterns. Right, from Grand Isle, we've been hearing that, so,
In essence,
yeah, so if we were to look at maps at all in the future, I think we would need to know where those choice towns are sending most of their students now.
So yeah, we can happy to look into what's available and if we can put it on a map.
Yeah.
that is an interesting question. It's a good, it's one of the thoughts.
And then finally, the last application that we had created was the Drive Time Explorer. And this, you can look at it from two perspectives. You can look at it from the perspective of the school. So you can select a school and then you can set a max drive time, and then it will go out and show you an estimated number of student age population broken out by each town, and then the drive time for those estimated students. We don't have the actual location addresses of students, so what we did was we used the number of town, and then using the 911 addresses, distributed like a fraction of a student to come up with the estimates.
Looks like something from the Huddle station.
And then in this application, if you toggle that show housing unit density, it'll where those areas where it's brighter, that's where you have concentrations of population.
Where is that?
This is selected Twinfield. And then if you look at it from the town perspective, here is selected Plainfield as an example. Set that drive time, and then you can see how far different schools are for your population. Got the tab on right here. See, most people are within that 10-minute drive. Thank you. Plainfield, then you can scroll down and see other schools, Spalding, so on and so forth, and it would be the breakdown of the estimate by school there. I also, there was a request for some 11 by 17 existing districts and supervisory unions. Tried to make it as legible as possible on those paper ones. There are links to the 11 by 17, but on the last slide here, I also included links to PDFs for larger scale maps, and not necessarily with the idea that you would print them, but if you open these, you could zoom in, and these have additional details like school, and there's a version that also has average annual daily traffic. So that's what these orange lines are, as well as areas of higher elevation. So those aren't on the 11 by 17. That would have been a little too cluttered or hard to read, but I did add links to those if you wanted a static map or a PDF that had all the existing districts, all the existing SUs, and a few more details there. I will note when you open the SU one, for example, supervisory unions, those that are showing supervisory unions and supervisory districts, the titles of that just also, but it does also include the supervisory
Can
district.
you break those supervisory unions out away from the map? So set them up, look at them individually.
The separate out the supervisory unions from the supervisory districts.
Well, no, from the map. So if you want to look at one SU, what's in it, as far as the schools and the towns that support it, just blow it up, right?
In this case, you would just, you could just zoom into it.
Okay.
On the school district explorer as well, you could just on the interactive map. Just go to it on the map.
And you're available as we need to.
And I'm available. You can also ask legislative council if you have other questions. We're happy to coordinate with them as well if they're dealing with different committees. So feel free to reach out to me or to council.
Yes. Yeah, following the last time you briefed, I think it was the joint committees went in and exercised these tools, and I found them incredibly intuitive and extremely beneficial. So I appreciate the refresher. Thank you for that.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like your pen.
Are you related to Peter John?
Remember that.
This is my great grandfather's curling club pin. Lennoxville, Quebec,
Oh, cool.
1923.
John, are you related to the real John?
I am not.
Okay.
My grandmother did try to claim that once, but her story didn't. Like,
All right. Well, okay, breaking, switching gears once again. Thanks again. We're gonna, take a first look. We had one, we heard the secretary's proposal for, CTE proposal. And we then Senator Robinson will introduce this herself. We have S313 that came out of support that the summer it's people. And I think you're going to introduce it.
Do you want me to sit at the end?
Sure.
Okay.
Looking for
It'll
all.
be a little more
Yeah.
formal than how things were in economic development. Sorry. Good afternoon. Committee.
we introduce ourselves.
There it is. I do that.
It's the journey of like 2 feet, but it does feel very different. For the record, Senator Kate Crawford, a member of this committee, and importantly, a member of Senate Economic Development with Senator Weeks, who I will not be offended if he is looking at other things because he heard this presentation this morning. I think I'm glad to hear it sounds like the two chairs of jurisdiction are coordinating on career technical education, because without that, it can really fall between committees of jurisdiction in a lot of ways. And so what we tried to achieve over the summer and fall was getting stakeholders together that I think some more of their locus of where they commonly sit is in economic development, employers, practitioners, trades folks, etc. And some more traditionally come into this committee, the actual CTE directors and the district leaders that try to work with them to give students these options and seamless pathways. I think what everyone would recognize is that we have a shared set of problems. There are variations on the same theme if you go around the state, that space, staffing, resources, and kind of other tangible factors limit the ability of our CTE centers to serve all the students they would like to serve. And if our middle schools particularly are not equipped or supported to offer exposure, then it's really uneven how students might learn that they have these CTE options and that they have this access. We had Ruth Durkee participate from the Agency of Education. We traveled first to the Hannaford Center. That was our first meeting. We went to River Valley in Springfield. We went to Hyde Park. We went to St. Johnsbury, and I was really glad to see Stafford on our committee's trip that we took to Rutland. So, in fact, I think some of the CTEs that I spent the least time in are the ones in my own county. But, we try to get a flavor of a lot of different ways CTE is delivered and the challenges there. What you see written here, I would largely give credit to Tom Cheney from Advanced Vermont and Seth Bowden from Vermont Business Roundtable. By the way, we were 3 years in a row at UVM. Seth Bowden was the student body president before I was, and then Tom Cheney was the year after me, and I helped him get his first job in the State House. So a little bit of career pathway development for all of us as well. I think we're really grateful to still be working with each other. This is representative of what we could all endorse for the most part. I would say everyone's probably still going to come in and say, this feels still highly aspirational and they would need a lot of support to get here. But you know, that we wanted to create a vision statement that has a little bit of specificity at the end. I will just name two things that really struck us throughout, and you'll see this actually more formalized in other states' work to address career technical education. I think I first learned that this is articulated in Oregon's career technical work, which is pretty advanced at this point. They've had a lot of formal meetings about it. And they look at it as kind of a 40-40-20 model. We, in the last generation, I would say, like as somebody who everyone said you have to go to a 4-year college or you will never earn a dime and you will, you know, be a failure. We have counted we have made our entire model nowadays around the model of kids going to get a 2- and 4-year degree. In Vermont, that's 40% of our students. And that isn't a failure. That's the 40% that probably do need a 2- or 4-year degree to go into the fields where that level of academic rigor is required. Another 40% need a certification. They need training in the trades. They need some kind of career technical pathway in order to be able to find meaningful work. And 20% of students generally don't need more formal education after high school to go into their chosen field and to be successful in that realm. We can sort of map this with the Vermont's most promising jobs. And, you know, you could take an 8-week course in something and be quite successful. But, you know, you can also hopefully, when you're 16, potentially get access to apprenticing as an electrician. That's what, you know, we heard a lot about students who said, please get out of my way, because if I can start apprenticing now, by the time I'm 21, 22, I can get my journeyman's license. And by the time I'm in my late 20s, I can have my own business in the trades. And they really said, get out of our way, which was nice of St. John Fair. The other data point that struck us is something I mentioned when we were talking about mental health, that really we should start looking at middle school as a time when students don't have to have their lives figured out. They don't even have to have their lives figured out when they're 18. But if they don't feel like they're on a path that is leading somewhere, they start to lose hope and they start to disengage. And most CTE programs start in 9th or 10th grade. And what we heard reported from student after student is that they really had to advocate for themselves to access those programs. It's not only not a guarantee, but there are ways that they feel like barriers were put in their way to accessing the program that they wanted. That all said, there, you know, everyone at the table, people in academic centers and technical centers, were committed to this system working better for kids. It was nobody's fault that the system has kind of become this way. I think that preamble kind of covers the intent language here, or the findings, I should say. And then the rest is intent language. I'll just point out a couple of things because it highlights things that came up in committee before we turn to Beth. You know, to me, the really critical thing we drive toward between now and maybe a future state, I mean, I think if you start to dream big and have this conversation, you all end up in the same place of comprehensive CTEs, which is schools where a student, regardless of their grade, regardless of their trajectory after high school, can take a shop class, can take an automotive class, can take a performing arts class and explore careers in performing arts. We definitely saw that represented in St. Johnsbury, where students could explore like they would on a college campus before having to make decisions about what to do with their life. So I think you even heard that echoed in AOE's presentation, that if we can get to a future state of regional high schools that have where we kind of incentivize career technical education to be built in, the students are a lot better off. The districts aren't fighting over funding that student. There's not a transportation barrier, et cetera. In most of the CTEs that have been developed recently or redeveloped, you see them do their very best to co-locate with their high school anyway. The question is, like we saw in Rutland a little bit, is can they go down both sides of the hallway all 4 years of their education? Right? There is a hallway connecting Rutland High School and Stafford, two exemplary institutions, but you have to commit to 4 years at Stafford to attend. And that's, simply not, that's a hard choice to make when you're 14 years old, frankly. So as we move toward that future state, the question is, what goals are we trying to imbue into all of our transformation efforts so that we're moving more towards students having universal access, no wait lists, no denials, no being told you're not good enough for career technical education, because that's probably an equal or greater number of our students want that. And they're being told at a very young age they have behavioral issues, or they're on their own for transportation, or something that means this doesn't become an option for them, and we lose them potentially. One of the things I'd love for us to explore that I think is squarely an education policy question is whether or not the EQS standards that are being proposed work at all for CTE education, I should say CTE, since that is career technical education. Jason Gingold from Montpelier High School principal at Montpelier, used to be the director of the CTE. He will tell you, as he started to, he really worries about some of the time requirements rather than proficiency requirements for how you would achieve those educational quality standards, because those time requirements are not going to work for CTE students. Jay Ramsey, another good person to talk to, who has gone from Agency of Education to Department of Labor, who would say, if we are losing kids after 16, then why don't we just help them graduate after 16 with what they need at CTE, and not require that they keep going back to a school that they don't otherwise feel connected to meet their graduation requirements. So you'll see in here that the goal ultimately is to either have a comprehensive CTE or let those kids be free to meet their education requirements in a flexible way with their CTE to graduate high school after the age of 16. It's actually funny in a way. We talked this morning about transportation being such a big barrier, and I brought up something that apparently this committee that I sit on, talked about last biennium, which is driver's education. From where I sat as chair of economic development and talking to the transportation committee, driver's education is a huge barrier in the state. It's one of our unfunded mandates that we should figure out a way to fund and support. We have a bill on the wall that actually Dave Sharp, former chair of House Education, emailed me about, because I even have issues with the idea of online instruction training for educators in driver's education. But I hope we can use it as a starting point to talk about driver's education, because there's probably no bigger barrier to a student getting to a CTE center or getting to a place of employment than being able to drive. And we are really diminishing our capacity to offer that mandate of after 15 years of age that you have driver's educational instruction. So that came up in the transportation realm. I think the last sentence of the bill is supposed to say education transformation process, not education transportation process. That's probably on me for not reading that closely enough. And I think another very concrete thing that might be this committee's responsibility versus economic development, and I leave that up to the chairs to discuss, is a huge barrier is the pay scale and the hiring practices in CTE. They are largely tied to the same practices as the academic centers. And they're trying to attract practitioners who, number one, could make a lot more money as an engineer out in the field. They do this out of love, but at some point they have to make significant financial decisions, and they face requirements that may not make sense for the kinds of courses they're trying to teach and the expertise they're trying to offer. So those are some of the real specifics I hope come out of this. But, we wanted to start with language that didn't make anybody feel completely left out or unheard, because our CTEs are doing the best job they can with the students they can reach. And I hope we remain committed to ensuring universal CTE access in the very near term and make this a priority for the Any feedback from this morning? I think I tightened it up
I think you tightened
a
it
little
way.
bit. Yeah, I know. This morning I was kind of waking up. But
Yeah, this is act two.
yeah, exactly. Thank you, Senator Reed.
It's like anything you want to do at Cooker.
That's right. That's right.
So this is all about, this bill is about just creating the direction, intent of direction.
Yes. I would say so. And I think if we endorse this direction, it should inform the other work we do, whether frankly it's mapping or fixing transportation or
Yeah.
addressing other things.
It's-
But like anything in education reform, every district built their own model and some of it's working and some of it's not, and they all need different help to be more universal.
So you're really talking, ideally, you're really talking about the St. Johnsbury model.
Like, I don't want to, offend anybody. But that is the value I see of a regional high school. Every time I feel like you're able to visit, like, we saw it at CVU. They're starting to build their own CTE on campus. They were building a house when we were there. They have a shop. They have welding.
That's the same thing, because those kids can those kids go in and out?
Yeah,
Class at a time, right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so that's working there. What you're talking about is working there.
I would say so, even though if somebody wants to do more, they still struggle, right? Like, I just learned that South Burlington tried to send 4 HVAC students to Essex and they all got denied.
Because they didn't just have
I
capacity.
don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to know why.
Yeah,
We need
yeah.
HVAC people. So the economic development issue is from the demand side. Like,
Yeah.
employers are begging us to solve this sooner than later.
So these are all inherent problems we've all discussed and seen ourselves with CTE. So what's the mechanism for fix?
I mean, out of our group, I tried to name some of the specific things that are universal barriers, the pay scale, the lack of flexibility. Where I would differ with AOE is that if our goal ultimately is to have regional high schools, first of all, I would say if we do anything with school construction or any type of consolidation, that it be nudging schools towards having a regional high school that has the
Yes.
land. Yeah, we do have a bill. I know, it's always fun.
I think we're gonna make it less fun. Is it a committee bill?
No.
Oh,
How
we're
about
coming
that?
to you.
How about that? 161.
Right?
We don't have it printed yet. It's.
161.
Okay, and you have a committee report on it? You have an amendment to it? Yeah, okay.
It's a struggle.
Should I check back in a few minutes or?
Okay.
I can, let me go get a scan up there. Okay, I'll come back in like
We have it
15
back-
minutes.
We have it back from Kirby.
Okay, perfect. I'll be back in
Okay,
15 minutes.
thank you.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. We should have-
Yeah, sorry. So school construction and the foundation formula and governance, I see as areas where we could drill down and start to make hard decisions and say, we're going to allow high schools to start to construct their own CTE facilities, but they're going to continue to get like some hard skills that require warehousing space at Essex instead of, on their own campus. But if we are going to use construction dollars or even bonding capacity and support to help create high schools in the future, I believe we should set some parameters. And I believe those should include comprehensive CTE or recognize that they might already have an incredible CTE facility really close by, but there cannot be those wait lists. There cannot be those denials. And what do we need to make sure that doesn't happen? So there's really technical things like 3-year rolling, averages for students to help places like Hannaford that are working on building up their capacity, all the way to the big vision of like, let's make school construction in the future contingent upon CTE, and let's figure out really at our middle schools what they all need to provide that exposure evenly. I was sympathetic to the secretary wanting to hold on to the Perkins funds and figure out a way to distribute them evenly. But, those are hard fought for the CTEs and the districts to do as much exposure work as they can in middle school. And so without listening to our CTEs about what they need to replace those dollars, for example, or what middle schools need to replace those dollars, it'd be hard to just intercept the money. The money comes with really significant reporting pressures, et cetera, that drive how they spend the rest of their money. At the same time, our academic centers are very reluctant to let students go. And so they're probably okay if a CTE says we can't take that student because of middle school behavioral issues.
So, Senator Sheen.
Yes, so preface, I agree with everything in this, and I appreciate it. I'm not at all trying to sound facetious, but so I
But what does it do?
findings, it's findings and legislative intent. So why a bill instead of a Senate resolution that says the same thing, or a joint resolution? Why is this a bill?
Could be a question for Beth in a way. I think there was a timing issue, I said, Beth, I want to create like a comprehensive regional high schools with CTEs built in. And she was like, well, let's start here because I would like us to spend time with those CTE directors and some of the stakeholders, even students, to say what is really in their way. And I could get very specific depending on the direction and talk about the pay scales, the educational quality standards. In fact, you heard the Board of Education's waiting for us to
So this is like a kind of a starting
the
place
marker.
so that we can.
I hope we
by
can.
policy.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Senator Weeks and I have been here this is our fourth session. And the CTE directors that come in and testify, they talk every day. They have the answers to fix the problems. They need our support and to make the policy.
That's right.
So.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'd be better off to let them come to us and say, this is how we fix it.
They have all,
And this is what
yeah.
we need from you to get it done.
They've literally been reading this since it came out. They've sent the
Yeah.
documents. Many of them have also sent reactions to the AOE proposal. And I personally don't think that's a valuable use of our time to keep reacting to proposals that don't work for them. It's simply to get them in and say, how would you make this work? How would you get to it? I mean, if AOE had the same goal of a comprehensive regional cooperative CTE, then we should be asking them how to get there, because intercepting all the money and giving 75 million to AOE and starting a new board, I don't think is the middle path to that.
I think AOE only had one FTE dedicated to CTE also.
They have more than one.
Yeah, there was a handful of positions that would have recommended for that role.
Yeah. And Ruth Durkee would probably love to come in. And I would love for her to say, here's how I can do some of these things and here's how I cannot. But then it probably does become a capacity and oversight question of, do you have a wait list and why? And who's on that wait list? And how do we tell them they have other options?
Yeah, 'cause I went to the Hannaford Center and they had the capacity, they didn't have the students.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, because I asked the question, you had 200 seats that were vacant.
Right.
If they magically got filled,
Mhm.
would you have enough instructors to take care of them? She said yes.
Yeah.
So that's an inherent problem.
Right. And that's, so I'll tell a story I told this morning. It was really valuable to hear from the students, right? And we found that in the academic centers as well. If you understand the barriers through their eyes, it feels solvable. One student from Southern Addison County essentially said he applied to Stafford and was denied, not waitlisted, but denied for welding, because he had behavioral issues in middle school. When someone asked, why didn't you apply to the Hannaford Center? He said, I was like 15 years old. I thought I just got rejected from CTE. I didn't know that there's two centers. So when they came in last year, this was not my passion until the CTEs came in, and for better or worse said well, we tell kids they're on their own if there's not a place at that program, or if they're can't get transportation to another program. And that crushed me to tell kids at 14, 15, you're on your own if you finally figured out what you might want to do with your life. And I think that's what the universal part means. Like, how are we spending as much time as we spend on the academic centers, on the career technical centers, to say this should be universal. There should be no rejections.
So should we go for that?
Sure.
Walker?
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I'm not sure of that.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. There are no short bills.
That's right.
Would you like me to share my screen?
What do people, I don't need it, but
Okay.
maybe the people are watching.
Okay.
So this is S313 as introduced. You've already gotten a great kind of overview of the bill in general. I think Senator Rom Hinsdale has spoken to the findings pretty exhaustively. I would suggest we start with section 2 on page 3, which, and I'm going to borrow this phrase that was used in economic development this morning, and that is that section 2 is like the challenge to you all. So it's all intent language, and it begins to realize a strong career preparation system. It is the intent of the General Assembly to transform Vermont's CTE system as follows. And then everything that follows is your challenge. Provide universal access to CTE, ensuring that every student can participate in CTE programming, including pre-tech and foundation courses, by increasing access to CTE in middle school and the first 2 years of high school, addressing barriers such as transportation, scheduling conflicts, and awareness, providing consistency in admissions policies across all CTE centers, and ensuring that no student may be placed on a wait list or prevented from accessing CTE when there is a viable alternative to the locally accessible program through the provision of transportation. The second challenge would be to enable flexible delivery models, expanding beyond regional tech centers, to offer multiple pathways for students to access CTE programming and graduate required high school courses by delivering programs attending high schools or in a hybrid format where appropriate to improve accessibility, and utilizing shared resources and technology to improve educational access and limit transportation needs. We are on page 4 in line 5. The third challenge would be to align the CTE system with workforce needs by designing and evaluating programs based on current and emerging Vermont labor market demands. To continue robust evaluation of the system through the comprehensive local needs assessment process, and utilize statewide research from Vermont's most promising jobs and VT labor market information to assess student outcomes in continuing through the workforce. The fourth challenge would be to create a sustainable student-centered funding system that removes disincentives for participation and supports program growth and innovation. Flexible delivery models and access must be taken into consideration to ensure the sustainability of program delivery. The fifth challenge really gets to that regional high school concept that the sponsor was talking about. Explore the viability and impact of CTE centers becoming diploma conferring institutions or comprehensive high schools. In situations where this is not possible, high schools shall be required to award the credits recommended by a CTE center. Sixth challenge is maintaining a strong adult CTE system by building robust adult and continuing education pathways within CTE that meet Vermont's upskilling, reskilling, and workforce development needs while connecting seamlessly with secondary programs and regional workforce partners. Such a system shall have a governance and funding model that promotes coordination, quality, program consistency, and sustainability.
Can I pause you there? So I'm guilty of treating adult education like an afterthought, just like CTE becomes an afterthought. And I just want to say what we heard, and I'm not even going to represent it well, are that there are barriers for them even sharing space. Like there are adult education programs that are barred from using CTE centers in off hours. And that blew my mind.
And did they say why?
There's like requirements that, yeah,
Depends on the CTE center,
exactly.
because I know Stafford had to get some of their vacancies, seats that they
Mhm.
needed. They actually a lot of students that participate in these all,
Yeah,
they gave them credit.
I think it depends on their model, like if they're half day or something, but we heard from people who are like, they're not allowed to use Workspace. That's, so it's like, wow, let's solve that. It's like low hanging fruit.
And then the last challenge, number 7 on page 5, line 4, coordinate CTE governance by establishing governance approaches that strengthen collaboration across districts, improve consistency and program quality, and better support positive student outcomes. CTE governance should align with the ongoing education, and I think we have all identified this should be transformation process, with the above goals as the lens through which decisions are made. And that is the bill.
Questions with that? Yes.
Well, this, just a comment, back to your point about, behavioral problems being a barrier. I think when seats are not readily available and they have to be selective about it, that some of the technical centers tend to go with, going through a scale of why people would not make better than somebody else. I didn't say that well, but they have to be selective.
Yeah,
If somebody's going to be disruptive in the class and somebody that's on the other side trying to get in isn't, then you have to be selective.
right. And so you heard me ask Stafford as directly as I could, like,
Yeah.
how do we get rid of the denials and the wait lists and keep your center excellent, right?
Yeah.
One would think if they could see themselves moving towards being comprehensive, they could at least find a way for the excellent students at, Rutland City High School to go down the hall and take exploratory classes or, some classes that aren't their 4-year program without disrupting the quality for those students. So, it felt like we are denying some kids CTE for 4 years. We're also denying some kids the ability to prove that they can, become better, right? Like if someone judged me by my middle school behavior, I would not be here, so that just struck me as like, I would like to know more about that. And then that student is stuck in an institution that they may not feel good in, right? They're still at their academic center, not doing great, I hear you, and I hear Stafford. I
So
just
are
want to
there-
get past
Are
that.
CTE centers required to have IEPs and 504 programs?
That was a whole shadow conversation, was that the flexible pathways have not been implemented fully. Like if they're being implemented fully, there wouldn't be an issue with students having to advocate for themselves to get CTE. So what's broken?
So
On page 3, line 6 and 7, ensuring that every student can participate. I like the sounds of that, but I think that opens you up that if you can get into trouble of you were supposed to ensure my student should have been able to get into this. And then there was circumstances that they couldn't, but you said you were going to ensure if there's different wording we can use to protect.
Sure.
The definition as well.
Sure. I mean, this is, I also wrote the bill 8 years ago, I think now, to stop suspending and expelling children under 8, right? So there's a whole nother layer, I think, of dangerous behavioral questions that might get someone suspended or expelled from an academic center, might also get them suspended or expelled from a career technical center. But let's also make sure there's equity there,
Oh, definitely.
right? I know that obviously you could be holding a weapon or something in CTE, and that's different, but let's use the same standard of danger to others of your behavior.
And I was thinking more of when the class is just at capacity and,
Right.
you've got the last person that decided 2 minutes or a day late that they wanted to
Right.
get in, but you said, this says I'm insured that I'm gonna be able to get into this program.
Right.
So we need,
Yeah. I mean,
hear
sure.
what you're saying, but
Yeah.
we always need, now.
Right. And I think, again, I hope people visit some of our CTEs and the comprehensive CTEs because, I'm sure at St. Johnsbury Academy, if you didn't do what you needed to do to sign up for, the shop class or whatever, it's not like you could just show up and say, I'm entitled to this.
Right.
Every school still gets to have their regular standards for enrollment. But yeah, sure. And wordsmith.
I think after being here for just a year, it's important that
Yeah.
that you have.
I do want to say this came up in the morning. Oregon and Massachusetts might be really good partners to talk to. States where they've really, really taken a look at CTE and CTE facilities and this continued pathway. And there are a lot of nonprofits in the country that help states figure out how to get from A to B and beyond in CTE because it's so important and we're losing the trades so quickly. So there's a lot of interest in helping states get CTE right.
So, just thinking about further testimony for this bill,
Mm-hmm.
which is different than further testimony for the whole issue. That's
Mm-hmm.
possibly, what's the committee's sense about, one bill, it's an intent bill, so it's potentially fairly simple. But do we want to have some testimony in, for a couple of hours just to really drive home some of the challenges?
Are you saying before we set a direction for where we want to go with CTE?
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
that bill.
Well, right.
It's a little different than what the Senate or might do otherwise throughout the rest of this year and going forward. So we can either use this as a vehicle
Mm-hmm.
for really exploring CTEs, or we have only so much time. So I'm just thinking about what's the committee's thoughts about testimony?
We always should take a little.
How much would, yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm suggesting.
So if you want my recommendation, Board of Education told you yesterday, they're waiting to see
Yeah.
if EQS, which frankly didn't include a lot of CTE participation at all, works for CTEs. And so I think as the Education Policy Committee, it's incumbent upon us to understand the EQS recommendations that exist now for academic centers and see if we endorse that path for CTEs or we want to explore a different path. I think we should talk about regional high schools and asking further, any high schools that are looking at bonding and construction, that if they want to be incented with state dollars of any kind, that they look at becoming comprehensive CTE. And I think we look at the pay scale and the whole HR issue that CTE face.
Yeah, so I understand all those issues. I'm thinking more narrowly about this. So we could use this as a vehicle for spending a lot of time on CTE, which that's one path. The other is what testing do we need for this? Yes.
So is there some way we can include this in the vehicle of accept the 3 plan that we come up with?
Well, that's, I think you're partially suggesting.
That's but my pay grade, but
Yeah.
I
As a
mean,
standalone bill,
Yeah.
Really,
so maybe, I mean, I think it took me some educating about we have 4 CTE models. This proposes 2. There's even problems there because there's the half day and, all of the superintendents who've already talked to us could tell us all the barriers they're having, making sure their kids can get CTE, and all those CTE directors can probably bring up other things. The common themes we heard were that the graduation requirements living with the academic center meant that the student is caught in the middle for their last 2 or more years of high school, and they might just drop out at that point. We heard from students that have to take a class online and go nights to do this, and That's like really hard to ask a 15, 16-year-old. So I can think of a lot of barriers we could explore. I could write language for all of these things. So it's not just aspirational, it's more specific. But it would help if the committee had a shared understanding about the problems we're trying to solve.
Senator Weeks.
Yeah, to your question, I think that we shouldn't take CTE in a silo. I fully respect the bill. Yeah, I think that we should be reacting to how to make Act 73 effective, which includes CTE. So a lot of this language can guide us. But I think to Senator Williams' point or question, what vehicle are we going to be massaging for the next couple months to get to an end product by the end of the session?
I'll just say, if you wanted me to tell all of the employer groups and, different and trades folks who are begging us to fix this, to fix it. I mean,
We all get it. Yes.
so right, that's happening in economic development potentially, because it's the employer side. I think we should spend a lot of time on this. I'll just say that. That's my bias. I don't see anything that much more important.
I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't. The question I think that's in the air right now is what vehicle do we use to affect this type of change? And I think right now, again, what I'm asking, in a form of a question, if not this vehicle, 313, what vehicle are we going to focus on for the next couple of months? Because I really don't know.
I think what I'm hearing is maybe we don't necessarily try to get this out per se immediately, as much as we use it as a framework for thinking about the larger issue in connection with the
Incorporated within.
Right.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, if I can stop talking, but I mean, what I saw coming last year from Commerce was largely what I think our group wrestled with for the last 6 months, and kind of wasn't necessarily reflected in what you saw from AOE. The APA Consulting, their original contract was for CTE, and their report, if we want to go back to that, where they talked to a lot of CTE stakeholders around the state, basically said you should choose between cooperative regional districts where CTE becomes a part of the district, or have a CTE district. I think our group spent a lot of time understanding why the CTEs felt divided on that question. But then, the kind of breakthrough moment was, does that solve any problems either way? If kids still have to get their diploma from the academic center and they can't get it from the CTE, like, what does that mean for EQS and all the other academic standards? And so then we saw a new proposal from AOE, frankly, that was more of a other thing that looked like a district, kind of. But I think the question is, are we endorsing a future state with comprehensive CTE where students have a seamless experience on and off campus to access career technical education?
So, okay, let's follow. So what you might want to do then is just bring in some testimony about the various possibilities for direction and then land on one, and then have that guide our work as we. Okay. Okay.
I think what the employers and other stakeholders kept trying to bring the group back to was, but does it solve any of the problems, right? If we just talk about regional or statewide,
So I think
we still have problems.
I think Senator Weeks is right. We all get it.
Yeah.
And so the question is, it's not so much educating the committee about why we need to fix it, but how we fix it. Because I think we're past the point of reckoning.
Right.
That we need to.
We're past the point of why, but then we spent the whole time on how and endorsed, people will disagree, but I felt that we should look to endorse 2 models instead of have 4, basically. That we should go from having the existing 4 models that get kids caught up.
Well, I think it's a discussion we can have as we move in.
So that's all I'm saying is maybe we start with understanding what's not working about 4 models and how we might move to 2. If we're gonna be really concrete.
That makes sense.
So I
Yes.
think this, as written, is very well written.
Thank you, Beth.
Concept, it's a component of the bigger issue.
Yeah.
Which is Act 73, how do we fit it in?
Right.
And I think that, the heads of the CTEs are working on this as far as the industry goes as we speak. So
Mhm.
probably once we get the policy set for Act 73.
Right.
This will fit right into.
Right. I don't even know how it fits into the foundation formula. Honestly, I think we said, try to think about a CTE foundation formula.
You mean in Act 73 or in
Yeah.
this bill?
Did we empower the group that hopefully is getting hired soon to look at?
There was intent language about transforming the CTE system this year, and then the report back, you're getting a report back on the foundation formula in general and updating the weights. And I believe there was direction in there about CTEs, so let me confirm that.
I think that's the only thing about CTEs in Act 73 right now. So if we want to merge them together, I'm happy to do that. It's just that the EQS and other things did not contemplate the CTEs at all.
The internet is very slow. I'm waiting for the page to open. If anyone has a paper copy of that.
I wish I was
If
that
anyone
good.
carries around a paper copy of that, that needs
Somebody does.
I actually already have X up on my computer.
Oh, that's so kind. I think it's coming up, but if you can find I
Yeah.
think it's 46,
Yeah.
45, 45A.
45A is right.
Oh my goodness, look at that. Thank you. Look at the teamwork. Okay, so in Act 73, Section 45A, page 89, requires JFO to contract for recommended updates to the cost factor foundation formula, which is what Act 73 creates. It specifically asks about moving from special education weights based on disability categories. Let's see. Yep, how to account for the provision of career and technical education with Vermont's foundation formula. That's specifically asked for in the report back, and you all are getting that on or before December of this year.
So do you, like, is someone able to say if the group's been hired, who's gonna do
That's a
that?
question for JFO,
Okay.
and I believe they are in process.
Okay.
But like towards the end of the process.
Okay.
But that would be a question for Julia.
Right, so let's just say there's a chicken and egg problem we have with CTE that I think Tammy Colby started to point out yesterday.
Yeah.
Basically, like, what are we asking them requirements to meet? How does it relate to EQS, and how do you fund those requirements? And I think Tammy said we could talk to other national experts. There are weights for, like, if you're doing aeronautics versus nursing, but like, I don't know, I could start to look for witnesses in that regard. I just don't know what direction you have to.
Yeah, it's a huge topic on the one.
It
hand.
could take all session, like
Yeah.
education reform,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
60% of our students.
Yeah. But let's see when I talk and
Mhm.
see about how to get it down to a point that we have the time to do it and integrate it.
Right. And as I said to Chair Clarkson this morning, it may be easier if you say these are pieces like the trades that, or the employer side that
Yeah,
economic development does.
yeah, okay. It's also, the other, now we're just sort of talking.
We're talking,
A little bit.
yeah.
But it's also, I read the, like in the intent section when it talks about it being a bridge to career, which is true, and I get it. It's also has value in its own
It's
right.
education itself.
It's education itself. We want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. And which is consistent with what you're suggesting. That's why comprehensive actually
Mhm,
does make a lot of sense, because you can,
mhm.
in some sense, you've got a handful of schools where you can go from English to car mechanics and back to history.
Exactly.
And that's,
And cooking and like,
yeah,
Yeah.
all things that if you're interested in are actually valuable in
Right.
their own right, whether you go into a profession or not.
right,
And there's also now with the way CT is working with things like robotics
mhm.
and such, you've got, it's for every kid.
When
Every kid in schools, could well want to be in more and more CTE.
when Burlington and Winooski had the Nellie Mae Foundation grant for educational transformation, and I worked for the city, I was like a chaperone for kids from Burlington, Winooski, and teachers going to a Met school in Providence, Rhode Island. The Met schools were funded originally, I think, by the CBS founder guy, and they have an advisory, right? We talked about advisories in some of our visits. They have social workers. They have like some basic foundationals their first year. And then for most of the rest of their high school experience, they spend 3 days off campus in a job. And they're starting their own businesses and they're working with the police and they're DJing. Like and then they come back and figure out what they need academically. And the kids came alive. Like our kids wanted so much of that.
By the way, also, I gotta go with you on that. Need to start this in middle school.
Yes.
Because that's actually working with these kids.
Yes. I still remember going to a bank in like 3rd grade. And then I became chair of economic development. Like these are really important things. Access to capital, like how to understand all of it is really important.
Okay. Yes.
Unrelated.
Yeah.
To 313. Yeah, I don't want to usurp the
No,
conversation.
fine, go.
Okay, so attended superintendent's lunch over at the Plaza too, which was very beneficial. But they had a question, which seeing we have an AOE representative here. There was a concern expressed by one of the superintendents that the foundation formula does not take into account the federal funding specific to poverty and special education. Their fear concern is that there's actually double dipping that the state provides via the foundation formula, its share of funds, but at the same time, the federal government is providing funds via Title X and what have you. And the question was, does the foundation formula already recognize all federal funding, or is it federal funding put on top of the foundation funding?
The federal funds would be on top of the foundation formula. Like Title I funding would be in addition to any economic disadvantage rate that would be in the foundation.
So the concern is that while we create the foundation formula recognizing poverty and special education needs, in fact, what we're put on top of the student via state funds
Mhm.
is a significant chunk of money.
Mhm.
Which my impression was that took care of those needs or address those needs. But now we have federal funding, which may in effect double the pot. And is that the intent? I'm not criticizing it. I just don't know. And the superintendent didn't know, so I said I would at least ask.
Sure.
But I think it's kind of it would be good to at least dispel that notion for the sake of the superintendents.
Yeah, I would say that the development of the foundation formula happened with full knowledge of additional, for instance, Title I funds that would come from the federal government as well.
Okay, so it's recognized by AOE and I guess others that the total cost needed to lift students out of poverty and special education needs is in fact the sum of the state funding and the federal funding together. That's the required funding necessary and appropriate for that lift.
Yes, and so the distribution of Title I funds is going to be a little different than how foundation formula would work.
Yeah.
But yes,
Okay, so, so in summary, foundation formula already recognized the fact there is separate federal funding specific to at least those two categories of Vermont students.
correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all I might ask.
Um, so we'll continue and we're good for today. Thanks.